to another episode of DevX, and this is one I'm particularly excited about because we have with us today somebody who's a fabulous speaker, a content creator in her own right, a brilliant writer, and a by mistake CA. Yeah. By the way, she also happens to be the CEO of Edelgive, one of the largest funds out there. I think cumulatively they have managed social impact capital of over 800 crores, right? And about just 200 last year. We'll kind of get to that. But first of all, welcome, Naghma. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Thank you. Thank you very much for no pressure at all. This is going to be a delightful conversation. Thank you for having me here.
It is my pleasure completely. Before we get into the thick of things, tell us a little bit about you in brief. Who is Naghma and how you got here?
Naghma there is no huge story. She is a person coming from a joint family in Mumbai, studied hard, became a CA, realized she shouldn't have become a CA, then did work in finance, then realized she shouldn't have worked in finance, and then found her way by accident into this fascinating world of development. And here is home. And that's just the sum of everything.
Awesome. I love meeting people like you because I have a very similar history, only from engineering, not from finance, but from engineering. Realized it was not for me and how. So while we're here, let me also take this opportunity to formally also just introduce DevX to you. Talk about why we're doing this, right? So the reason we really started DevX, Naghma, is we as an organization have a lot of experience in communications and in fundraising. And somewhere we felt, that we can bring those two together to the benefit of the sector at large. And that's kind of how DevX was born, where the podcast is basically about speaking to people like you, people leading the grant making, CSRs, donors, and try and give nonprofits a better insight into how your minds work, into how your organizations function, so that we can kind of together maybe try to help nonprofits grow much better when they have an insight into how you think. Yeah. So that's the purpose of the podcast. And looking forward to you helping us do that today.
I have seen some of your episodes, and I think the purpose does fructify when you see it. And I'm ready to go. You do this really well, so I hope this conversation does become useful for whoever's watching.
I have no doubt that it will be. So, when we start off, so let me tell you, I don't get to do this often, but can we start off the podcast, this episode, on an angry note? Yeah, I don't get to do that often. It sounds like a lot of fun. I know you have a very special relationship with anger. Tell us a little bit about that.
About my relationship with anger?
Yeah.
I think anger is one of the most beautiful human emotions. And it's a very underrated, the power of anger. If used well, anger is like this nuclear weapon we have. You direct it somewhere and anger has to be tempered for sure. It's like fire, Fire can burn the whole house down, and fire has power that nothing else has. So a lot of the good work that I do comes from channelizing anger. So I love anger.
Awesome. So we'll hear more about how it has propelled your actions and your organization. Yeah. So I'll give a brief overview. I think today what we'd love to talk about, some of the things is one is about Edelgive itself, right? About the different ways in which Edelgive gives. Yeah. So we'll talk about Sandbox, the Sandbox Fund, and how that operates. We'll talk about the Grow Fund. I think there is so much that I want to know about that. We'll talk about collaborations, what really has gone into making them, and try and pull off from there different things that can help a nonprofit that is watching, and hopefully also help other donors and other CSRs on maybe some leaves that they can take and use in their own work. So that's the broad agenda, the broad structure that we'll try and follow. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the Sandbox Fund. So what is that about, and just walk us through that.
Sandbox is actually something that I inherited when I joined in 2012. Edelgive was actually a product of very good intentions that if we're cutting checks, let's do it well, let's do it with some purpose, and let's do it in a structured fashion. And when I joined, to my utter delight, the way they funded was not sector focused in like one sector or one state. There were 10 grants in 10 states. And all of these grants were smaller organizations, younger people, very, very community responsive work. And no bigger science than that. I think a good leader and the quality of response to the community's trauma is what I think was the criteria. So that's been one of the essential core principles of how Edelgive still functions, that the person who leads and the quality of the response to the community is paramount to how we view our partners. And what happened with the 10 different states is whatever small learnings were coming our way, they always came with a context and they always were contradictory too. You know, a program in Calcutta would give us a very different response from a program in maybe Alwar. We would see that, something that we'd entered thinking that it's just a simple livelihoods program really ended up being something that was more malnutrition based. And we would find it because there was patience, there was investment in those who worked very closely to the ground, and the learnings really fueled a lot of the good work that, again, we do so far. So Sandbox is really that place. We have about 40 grants that go out, different parts of this country. Largely, if we have to pin down what are the focus areas, education, gender, and climate resilience and community action. That's broadly there. But these are grants that are giving us so much intelligence and so much understanding on what works, what doesn't. We put our risk in there, we observe. These are usually aging grants. Like there's nothing in there that is younger than 3-4 years. I think one has just crossed 10 years. And we're very, very focused that with the growth of the grant, there has to be growth for the community and there has to be growth in our learning. So that's our learning hub.
Sounds really more like a learning fund.
Oh, it's a learning fund for us. But Absolutely. The partners are veterans. They might be young, old, they might be more rural or peri-urban. We lean more towards those who have lesser access to metros. But what is common amongst all of them is they know their communities well. So we follow their lead on what works. And our input comes at, more, or things that we're good at. Maybe how can we scale or how can we bring in better systems or something like that. But we are very hesitant to advise on how can you make your program better.
And I'm seeing that more and more, that evolved stance in donors, where it's more about, hey, you're the expert. We are looking for people who are from the community, who really understand the nuance, and you tell us what needs to be done. Right? Yeah. I'm so glad the sector is moving there. I think 10 years ago, if you were doing that was perhaps way ahead of its time. So that's really, really cool. So about 40 NGOs, and that is your core CSR fund, right? What's the kind of budget that fund provides? Cumulative.
Very, very easily, it would take up about 20-25 crores a year.
And how do NGOs apply for this? How do they, if they're doing some great
right
work?
From the beginning, we've had more of a scoping mechanism where we don't really put out open calls. So the way it used to evolve at that point is we know that we want to work in these areas, like for example, in gender or in women's empowerment. About 2015-16, it dawned upon us that simply working for financial inclusion or life skills is not going to work. We need addressing of social norms and social security for women, like access to property rights, access to legal structures. These are very important while we are building her for better financial capability. Because backlash violence is a real thing. So an aware woman will also be able to use her income well. So that was something that we arrived at about 7, 8 years ago. And with that, we went out looking for organizations who are focused on, empowerment with context. And that's how that portfolio got built. And that's how we also bring in more. So because our purpose is very clear, we actually hunt for organizations and bring them in.
Interesting. Where do you look? How do you find these amazing gems in India?
Oh, it's a crazy place. But see, we had a humble but brilliant cohort to start with. So we listened to our partners. We also spoke in terms of what are we going to find, which area will we look for. Like in our community resilience project, we're very consciously, one of the projects is in Thar desert and the other one is in Tamil Nadu, where in one case there is a drought and the other case there's excessive water. Now that's a very, very, very deliberate action. So it's a designing of a sandbox also that adds to what we are really trying to do and how we will bring that out in our learnings as well as in our action.
I think the diversity and richness of what you learn from that is probably hard to even imagine. And using that, now tell us a little bit about the Grow Fund. Now that's a very different fund. It's a very different fund structure, very different mechanism. 100 crores. 100 NGOs. My God, that's ambitious. That's aspirational for NGOs. It's crazy. Tell me about Grow.
Yeah, Grow is like this child that's growing up. And
100 crore child? Okay.
no,
Awesome.
it's beautiful. We are in the last 6 months of the first round of Grow, and it is by far there are many very, very rewarding moments, so I can't really place any one at number one. But this is in terms of magnitude and the statement we're trying to make and the culture that we're trying to influence, the most powerful thing that we've been able to put out. And 3 years ago, I had put this idea out, hoping that people come together. Today, I'm a believer because people did show up and all kinds of show up. So what does Grow really do? During COVID, we realized that organization building and basically worrying about organizations is not on anybody's priorities. We used grassroots NGOs for final mile delivery. We didn't give them any salaries. There was so much money that was coming in for rations and very few were really paying for people. And whoever was delivering rations was actually taking a life risk. But there was no compensation. There were thousands and lakhs of people, feet on street, who were risking their personal lives and their own families' lives to ensure that the large community in India did not go hungry. And we didn't worry about them. And that was, I think, honestly, the final nail for us. We've been seeing over years that, we look at costs and we look at structuring of how organizations should work very stringently through the budgets. And I feel that if we want meaningful impact, we have to pay for it. But for whatever reasons, people get ignored in the sector, and building of NGOs into scaling or growing organizations needs a little more investment. So during that time, it became evident that we need to do something that is permanent, that can be repeated, but that can also scale, because the problem is big, right? So the structure is, it's a copycat of what actually happens in finance, which is the structure is having a portfolio of 100 organizations, 100 NGOs. They are sourced through an open system where 2,355 registered. They were shortlisted to the final 100, all through a process that is documented, audited. 16 experts came in to bring them down to the final 100 and then onboarded them. And we became the seed funders as well as the managers of this portfolio. On the other hand, because somebody had to foot this bill, we came in with the first 10% and then the funders showed up. MacArthur, EMGF, Hope Foundation in India, Rohini, Anilekani, and Amit Chandra, always leading the way. And so many individuals and so many smaller and larger companies that joined in. And 33 funders came together along with Edelgive to support the Go Fund. And I hate to call it a philanthropy fund because I think it reduces the value. It's a financial instrument to give grants. And all the funders for me are shareholders to this company that's basically lifting the ecosystem. And they show up as shareholders, and that's the proudest moment to see all funders with different sizes of investments come in to look at the 100 together, to see what their money is doing together. It's a very gratifying experience.
So Naghma, I get that. I think that's a wonderful analogy, okay, of how you've actually constructed it. This is a giving fund, a financial instrument for giving, rather.
Yeah.
And it's all, wonderful and fine to say that you have so many shareholders. But at the end of the day, my question is actually, how do you manage all the 30 plus logos on the Grow Fund? Because, well, that's important to us, right, in the sector.
That's important to us in the sector. And who said it was easy?
Tell us those stories. Yeah,
no, one is, so the 33 who are funding Edelgive, I can tell you, I think benchmarks for good behavior. They're also not the norm. They are really the aberrations. Generous people who have come with a mission. They ask us very hard questions, and that's what we want. Because again, who said we know everything? The beauty of a collaborative is you walk in knowing that there are smarter people in the room, putting their money where their mouth is. So that's the 33. I'm sure logos is an analogy that you're using or a tactical thing. But
basically credit, right? Everybody, they require credit to show their impact.
So credit everybody has. In fact, credit everybody has. In fact, you won't be able to tell who's funding big and who's funding small amount. I think there is that shows very good behavior from all of them. Very gracious that, we don't want our logo in left or right. We are there and we are here for a collective. It's also how we set the tone of the collaborative. Okay. The at least from an Edelgive perspective, we are very clear. And when we get into partnerships, whether it's with funders or with organizations, it's a more learning mindset. All conversations may not be nice and pretty, but the first hurdle is usually the last hurdle, which is, are you in sync? Is that money, is the color of the money the color you need? Sometimes, and that is a very important decision to make.
So Naghma, I want to double click on that. You're right. It looks really good today when you succeeded, when you have 33 on board, when you're in your last 6 months, right? Tell me a little bit about what it was like on day 0 or day -1, and how did you get the first couple? What was that journey like?
Yeah, there are two, 3 stages, but I will tell you, first stage is better than the second.
Okay.
First is, so see, for anything like this, and this is the methodology that I use as well, for any good idea, it's very important who comes in first.
Okay.
And the core nucleus is very important. Who are the first 4, I would say? Because the DNA of the collaborative gets defined by who walked in first. Okay. I did not follow the fundamental of good fundraising, which is you go to 100 to get raised from 2, which I believe is the way it is. There was more homework on who are the 20 that we need. A lot of homework, who are the 20 organizations, and there has to be a 10% conversion, which is at least 2 of them have to say yes. So which means we have to get those 20 right. So there was a lot of time spent on who we should go to first, because not the first 2, the first 4 have to be right. 2 from the international community, 2 from the Indian community. And so luckily we have walked the talk for more than a decade. We have been talking about building better structures, doing better philanthropy, grassroots. And so the first 5 or 6 who got our, request for consideration, not even a proposal. At the first stage, the next thing that we did is we did not make proposals. We made concept notes, which is just 2 pages or 3 pages. So again, the investment has to be where it matters. Invest in research rather than tools. Tools help you do what you want, but what do you want to do is first. We needed 100 crores. We needed to raise 100 crores. We never raised it like this. So it became very important who are the 4 really who will walk in first. And I remember that, in fact, why should I not take their name? MacArthur was outstanding in the way they responded. We had sent it to 6 and 4 out of 6 said yes, by the way. And
wow.
So yeah, but that's what I'm telling you. It was going after 20, knowing who is my dream team, and hoping that we can give them what it needs for them to say yes. To say that it was stressless is falsehood. Nobody's having fun raising money. It's like so,
the biggest myth is once you raise the money, that's it. It's done. It's all sorted.
No. That's exactly why one has to say no to money that doesn't work for them. And this is a statement that I make with huge embarrassment. Everybody cannot have that choice. Everybody does not have the choice. So a lot of times you take whatever you're getting. But if there is any bandwidth and if there is any power to hold, then we have to look for money that serves us well. Because if the wrong alignment happens, and I don't believe that sometimes a funder wants something else, you want something else. If there is a mismatch at the stage of partnership, there is going to be crisis as soon as partnership culminates, which is money hits the account and then you're spending more time in serving the funds than in doing the work.
Yes.
And yes, everyone doesn't get the benefit of making that choice. It's tough. Fundraising is tough. So, but if there is any room, then we have to hold on. I strongly urge that we have to hold on. So with Grow, because we have not announced anything. It was it was something that I could control. That if this idea is not appealing to people, it shouldn't work. That's the third thing I learned. I learned as practice, and we learned as practice that the idea is my idea, it's my baby. It doesn't mean the world has to love it. Sometimes good ideas are not coming at the right time, or they're before time, or they're too late. And if the market shoots them down, it's a bitter pill to carry. But it is what it is. So it was, in that sense, it was a very strange time where it was also testing, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? Will people say yes? And I think MacArthur came in first and said, in principle agreement. And I would just say, just agree with me in principle so I know. And as soon as MacArthur said yes, and the Gates Foundation said yes, in India, Rohini Nilekani Philanthropies is just like some outstanding kind of funders. Then Amit Chandra and his team, A.T. Chandra Foundation, they're amazing. So we had our first 4, and then I knew it will work. And then the rest is history.
You know, Naghma, I'm seeing such strong parallels because essentially the role that you played, like you rightly said, was that of not a fund, but a fundraiser, right? What from this can a non-profit take away in their fundraising, right? The importance of research, knowing the donor that you're talking to, not as I learned from you, spray and pray, which is the predominant fundraising philosophy, right? This is like the opposite. So tell us what can a non-profit take away? How can they become better fundraisers?
One is know the stakeholder. Don't waste your time mailing folks who, if you go to the website, that they fund sanitation. Going to them with education will not work. We're wasting our time. So in the research, it's not just important to see, do they fund what I'm doing, but also in the portfolio that they put out there of what they're funding, what are the commonalities? What do you see as patterns? What are they putting out in their mission statements? And what can my work align with? A little bit of that is extremely important. See, the reasons why collaborations become so tough is because we forget the fundamental question. It's like, what's in it for them? Assuming people should collaborate with me because I'm a decent person with a great idea and the community needs it is not practical.
Okay.
It's not like I said, every organization has their rules and the work has to align. So what is it that can be aligned? So that homework is extremely important. It will cut our trauma time in reaching out to those folks who say yes.
I so vibe with that. I think a no is often a way to save your time. It is a way to save your time,
I
the resource.
love it. Like, give me a no any day. Let's not be so polite. A no is fine. It saves days and sometimes months. Sometimes we're stuck in proposal stages for months.
Yeah.
If only people don't say no because they don't want to hurt feelings. And if we are okay with listening to a no, then our life becomes much simpler. Then we can focus where it matters.
Absolutely. In fact, I say this often. For me, a big win for DevX, right, is if we put an episode out with a donor, a non-profit sees it, and if they're able to see that this is not right for them, that's a win for me.
Yeah.
Because that saves so much time for the non-profit, that saves so much aggravation for the donor.
Completely with you on that.
Awesome. I'm so glad to have that validated.
I wish we were not so polite, and we realize that sometimes a no is the kindest thing that can happen to us.
Yes.
In time. A no in time.
Yes, the power of no. Wow, yeah. I love that. So tell me, let's make this now a little bit more specific from a Grow Fund point of view. Okay, what does Grow Fund support? Because that's quite different from Sandbox and in Edelgive. You have a great deal of diversity in what you do. You have a great deal of diversity in where you do it and how you do it. Tell us a little.
So see, the Grow Fund is beyond one cycle. The Grow Fund was crafted to be a financial instrument that can be used by whoever we would like to use it. Ultimately, it should be a smart mechanism where organizations could be sourced faster, onboarded faster, funds could be given, reporting could be had. All of that is faster, smoother, and much, much cheaper if you look at just the process. And it should be a place where funders come and say, all right, this is what we're doing together. This is how I'm giving money. It's de-risked, it's well managed, and we don't have to worry about the technicalities of giving. We can worry about what's happening with it. Now, if that had to be the motive, the first round had to be complex in what it's going after, so that everything following it simplifies. So the design of Grow was that it is a pan-India fund because COVID was pan-India, it was pan-world, but we are talking about India right now. So it was very idealistic in its design, and it's been a pet peeve that when we say pan-India, we just look at central India. We ignore the extreme north, northeast, so we don't even remember. If South we think is too contained. So we do have these regional bias.
And it's everything south of Goa.
Yeah. Let's not even begin there. It's like, everybody's a Tamilian. But
Madrasi, yes, I have a special level of resonance with that.
of course, why not? But so it was like, let's do pan India, and North, South, East, West will have equal representation. So before we decided that, what would the final 100 look like? Final 100 would be 25 from each zone. Final 100 would be not more than 10% of any such sector.
Okay.
And we should have 9 sectors therefore, and a 10th should be a potpourri of everything that doesn't get funded usually, or people forget about it. And
Wow.
so that was in the design. So there was an extensive media outreach plan that was created. And all of this I'm telling you happened in under 6 months. All right. So how to reach out to those organizations. We also said, okay,
This was an open call. This was an open call.
This was an open call. So, but
Okay.
who are we opening it up to?
Right.
That was very clear. We had to be clear. And this was for the small and mid-size. But we also need to be very, very certain. This was also during COVID. So we didn't know how long COVID would last. How do we manage digitally? And how do we ensure that even the weakest organization in the 100 is compliant, is able to do some good? So that these are all the parameters that were almost put on the table, and the designing happened keeping that in mind. And the outreach then happened. We had 12 Zoom calls in different languages. We had videos of how to apply to grow in transcripted. We went into 20 regional languages because social media is overrated in many places. So we went print in 20 languages, and we got
Print
to
ads, yeah? You mean print ads?
in paper.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, go on.
So that's how. So see, because we intend, but why should someone believe that this is happening? Nothing like this had happened before, right? And the fact is that there are enough in the same old zones who will apply, and we will end up with the same group. But if we very clearly, like we want, the idea was also that 80% of the names that are listed, most people would say, "Arey, this is ye kaun hai?" And but they should have a very, very, very strong history of work. So that's how.
More like, how could we not have heard of these people?
Exactly. I remember as soon as it got launched, one of the premium funders texted me and said, "Will you even find 20 like these?" And I said, "You'll be surprised." And if I don't, I'll return the money back.
Wow, that takes guts. Saying no to money. If we don't deliver, I'll pay the money back. My God, that takes guts, and that takes a certain level of conviction that I think is really amazing.
We had to get the process of sourcing right.
And I'm going to just give deeper context to this. Getting it right is not in just one area or getting it right in one thematic area. So the thematic area spread is crazy. So it's climate, ecology, and animal welfare. It's community development, art, culture, and sports as the second. The third is community welfare. Then you're working with disabled people, education, then gender rights and equality, health and sanitation, livelihood, poverty, and research and advocacy. I think that's the spread of what all you give to. So I cannot imagine how you standardize this, across.
Oh yeah, there was chaos in the team. I have to credit the Edelgive team, the Grow team. I don't know how they're still sticking around with me. Honestly, the trauma. This is again, it's very nice in 2023 to be able to sit and talk about this. I am the source of a lot of blood pressure in this team. But my God, how people showed up again, to ensure that we pulled up in the way it's supposed to be. So,
no, yeah. And another thing, I think there's another mini stage, okay, I want you to talk about. The funders said we're in. But you're talking about here international donors, family philanthropies, Indian family philanthropies and funds. We're talking about, I think, also a couple of CSRs who have contributed to the fund and individual philanthropists.
Correct.
Just take a minute. Please talk to me about what was the compliance nightmare behind this. Tell us about it.
Oh my God. Where do I even begin?
Wherever you want, and then work your way left and right.
Okay, so at that point we had 4 chartered accountants in Edelgive.
Okay.
All right, and including me. So this is the one time where I thank my stars. I studied what I did. There's a deep appreciation of everything compliance, and the fact that we always have to be on the right side of law, and so should all the 100 who are associated with Grow. So there are two parts, right? There is the funder requirements, and then there is the 100 organizations, and the fact that so they need to file their returns on time. They need to report on time. So that's a different thing. I'll come to that. With the funders, what is the compliance that they should be putting out, and what do we need to respond to? How do we manage cash flows? How do we all of that? But that is also done. But what is most important is why did they join? Okay, like one funder joined in because they were very keen that the Northeast gets funds. Another joined in because they wanted to see how a financial instrument can be created. Another joined in because what does capacity building look like? So 33 folks, 33 mandates. All right, they came in with a very liberal approach, but they want different things out of it. Now, if that is my responsibility, that is my team's responsibility, because what we are creating is almost knowledge infrastructure. So what they're asking for, we have to deliver. At the most basic primitive fashion, you have to pay back, and you pay back with value. With the 100 organizations complete, I mean, there were, I think again, there were about 12 Zoom calls before money got transferred, ensuring that we understand the requirements of CSR, the requirements of IT, of FCRA, everything. Not because we assume that they don't understand, but because we are now in a group. It's all for one and one for all. So the success of Grow is honestly because of the 100 who've been onboarded. Because finally it comes down to what is the money doing? Right? So that community
and were you scrutinized as Edelgive? Because you have to satisfy 33 different funders.
Of course, every funder who gives us money has a right to audit us, has a right to ask more questions, check, things that, we might not be comfortable with. But the day we check in to accept funds, we sign up for that. Okay? And we have to sign up for the most rigorous of processes, because again, for this purpose, I keep the purpose of money away. Okay, forget doing good, forget philanthropy, keep everything aside. Somebody's trusting you with money. Okay, we have to show them that we are trustworthy, and just the name doesn't matter. The name doesn't matter because compliance is compliance, so we can't feel about it. Yeah, of course, the fatigue comes in sometimes and all that, but again, that's a part of. And I don't think this is a philanthropy thing. I mean, in the corporate world, in the VC world, in the startup world, I mean, there's one that is a struggle of raising money, but the other is, post-raising money. The whole process is tough for everyone.
I wanted to just hear on that from you, Naghma, and the reason why I wanted to do that is because I hear a lot of NGOs talk about compliance almost like it's something evil, that's cold. Corporates have become so cold is what I've actually heard. So I just wanted to hear from you, and I want non-profits also to hear that you also have to face that, and it is a requirement. It is not a luxury. It is not a demand, and it's not just something you inflict on non-profits. Right? You face it too.
I wish it was that simple. Actually, if it was all about bad behavior, we could do something about it. It's like, but you can advocate for better behavior. We may want to say, have people do it more kindly maybe, but the fact is that everyone has to be compliant, and it is a requirement. And once it becomes a requirement, it becomes an obligation that we are compliant, and processes have to be scrutinized. So I completely understand. It is a cold process. It's finally numbers and Excel sheets, and a lot of us would rather be, sitting where the final impact happens than being in our rooms explaining why an expenditure is booked wrong. We would prefer, but I think we also need to understand that if our goal is bigger, this is one of the price that we pay. Ensuring we make least amount of mistakes while reporting helps us a long way again in saving time later. So
I think a certain amount of, I would say, reverse empathy up the line, at least in terms of fund flow, is very, very required. And I think we need to feel for the funders as well. Awesome. Before we move on, there was something I was doing my desk research, and I found something very interesting. There's a collaborative that you are part of called Pay What It Takes. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I couldn't find much information, but I have the best source right now.
Pay What It Takes is one of our 6 collaboratives anchored by Britspan. And for years, even before COVID, they have been talking about the fact that we don't pay what it takes in the sector. In India, the first year was focused on really speaking to, I think, if I'm not mistaken, more than 300 NGOs to really see whether they know their true costs, are their true costs being funded, and if they're not being funded, then how are they being met with? And now it's matured to a point where it's more around, going to funders and saying, we need to pay what it takes. So it's now speaking to the other side of the stakeholdership. So in that sense, the happening of it Grow is almost like a pilot for pay what it takes to see really how, if organizations are given the budgets to do better on their capacities and their core costs, then they actually, their impact does multiply.
Amazing. I think you're leading the way there, and I hope a lot more people follow. That's my wish for the sector. Now, Naghma, now in your experience of Grow, right, you have had a very unique vantage point. You managed to get, like I said before, you've got international philanthropies, you've got national philanthropies, Indian philanthropies, you've got CSRs, you've got individual philanthropists writing checks. Naghma, there's also another donor class, right? It's one, I think, which is always very intriguing. Okay, and the potential of it is there's reams and reams written about it, and that's really the retail donor. What's your take on retail giving, online crowdfunding, and things like that?
Retail giving has high power.
Okay.
Large organizations like Goon, who are large in the work that they do, they were fueled by retail giving, by the generosity of the common woman or the common man.
Okay.
So the retail fundraising is there are Ketu, and there is Milap, and there is Give, and there is an infrastructure available. But the campaign has to be run by us, right? Retail funders may not ask you a question today, but if you want to ensure that they give you again next month, and then again, you have to put out some. So one has to be prepared. Otherwise, you'll just put up links of campaign, and 5 people will donate, and most of them will be uncles and aunts and friends of friends. But if you really want to go after retail fundraising, then go after it properly. That's what I would say.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. And in fact, Naghma, a lot of what we are talking about, whether we're talking about fundraising, whether we're talking about any aspect of it, and a lot of other things also in the sector, I think are underpinned on communications, right? Communication in the social sector. That's something that I want to understand a little bit more from you on. What do you think? Do you think as a sector, do we do communications well? Is it leveraged well enough? What's been your observations?
I feel we communicate what we want to instead of what people need to hear.
Okay.
And what we are in love with instead of coming from a perspective of what needs to be understood. Second is all communication starts to look the same. All right. What are we really wanting to say in our communication to the world? For example, if you see the trend of the Edelgive annual report.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love the latest one.
Thank
Avengers
you.
Assemble.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, why don't we need to have a little fun.
Yeah.
We can't all be pink and roses and, and high empathy. I mean, a little bit of a power is not a bad thing. And we don't. So, we had a lot of discussion on that one and how it needs to come out. And I'm glad you like it. But the way I feel we cannot be obsessed with standing out in how we communicate, but we need to be sure what we are saying.
Yeah.
And that needs to be with a very strong empathy to the listener. Will they be able to understand it? Is this going to stand out in their minds? Because we're talking, right? The structure of communication is not I get to say what I want. It's like, are you here? Are you able to understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
The process doesn't end until you have understood what I have said.
The biggest myth in communication is that it has happened. That's what I've heard somewhere, and it is so true.
Yeah.
That's essentially what you're saying.
Yeah. Till you don't understand what I'm saying, I have not communicated. I may have said it.
Yeah.
And it is the same with our organizations. It's the same with the development sector. Development sector as a whole.
No, I'm always very curious to get a donor's perspective on this because coming from communications, for me, or as an org, we see it as this beautiful transformative thing, but so often it's just, we see it being watered down, communication being watered down to collaterals.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
This document, this leaflet, this video, that's all it is.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about communications more deeply, when you're talking about strategic communications, it's really not even about the communication, it's about the brief. It's the brief on why do you require that communication? What is the purpose? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? What is the purpose that it is meant to achieve? What are the barriers to that? And how do you overcome or shift them out of the way? What's the way to circumvent? That's really where it kind of starts. And I'm just always.
It's the most underused superpower that we have. We can all communicate to a good or a bad level.
Yeah.
But if we put purpose behind it, we can multiply the results we get. Like why? Like you rightly said, there is a collateral, there is a leaflet, there is an annual report. Is the goal all about printing it? Or are we looking to, again, get allies, finding our tribe, letting the other tribes know that we exist? Okay?
Yeah.
And so all of these things, if they looked at, things to be done in this year, then it's a waste. But if they are taken, if we look at them as our properties, our assets, they speak for us when we can't speak for ourselves. I mean, basically, these properties go where we can't.
Yeah.
And that should really get us on high alert.
Yes, absolutely. And this is org communication facing external stakeholders. There is so much that the power of communication can do in a project on ground for what are the objectives that you're trying to meet. It can be exponentially, catalytically much better, right? When you plan the communication right. Is that, just curious, is communications an area of support that you provide your nonprofits either in Sandbox or in Grow or is that part of what you help them with?
What we do is we do have a lot of the organization costs that are factored in our budgets. We don't really look at capping them to a 5% or a 2%. And we ensure that they are able to use it at their free will. We also encourage that folks invest in their organizations to be able to communicate better. That is also a second. It would be wrong for me to say that there is a line item called strategic communications that we're very focused on building. No, that's not. But
there shouldn't be either.
But it is the fastest way of putting the spotlight and saying, hey, this is important.
Okay.
See, there is value in budget line items, right? Why are people so stickler? Because as soon as you make it a budget line item, you will have people automatically looking at it and saying, hey, what are we supposed to do under this?
Iska kya hua?
Iska kya hua? Iska kya nahi hua? So honestly, no, there is no line item like that. We do it. We try to get them to participate. Like now, everything that we put out in Grow, we kind of encourage folks to participate. We try to make this linear. I also see even on free platforms, everyone does not engage. But while we're saying all of this, organizations are different sizes of different bandwidths. There are lakhs of organizations who have limited teams and limited bandwidths. And for the founders, this does become a very sore topic because the founders are multitasking at 5-6 levels. It's very important also to place it here that some part of our work is investment and some part of our work is management. And even if it is a limited bandwidth in the day, even if it is 1 or 2 hours in a day, and all days are not possible, that's also understood. But there needs to be a time period in the week that is invested to doing things that will go a long way to enable our work. And I would categorize these things as part of that time and look at some things as investments for the future.
But it's also something that can be taught. It's also something that can be learned. It's also something that can be cascaded. And today with AI, it's also something that can be implemented to a particular extent. On that note, but I must say, I was going to tell you this after, but I will tell you, I think the way you manage your time and your team is something else. I mean, wow.
Who told you that? It's like
lived experience, as we like to say.
There's so much I can do better, and that's very important to also know. There is always so much better to do. I don't think I do too many things.
You just sound like an Avengers level benchmark. I think that's the problem. Like superhero level benchmark, not for normal people.
No. But let me take this graciously for everybody who's listening. I manage my time and my team brilliantly. Let's keep it like that.
Awesome. So tell me something. I always like to do a little bit of a shout out at the end of every episode. I know it's going to be a hard choice, but can you name one or two NGOs that you work with who you think are doing a simply fabulous job? Who would be the names you would take and why?
Okay, so in 10 years, you know how many great NGOs I know. So I'm going to one I shouldn't be picking, but if I have to pick, I'll tell you the names of the two organizations where I went first.
Okay.
All right, I went to them first, and therefore they also taught me things about my journey and my work that I have learned so far. Like, I mean, even today, those visits have stuck in my mind. So, number one is this organization called Samaritan Health Mission in Calcutta that works on community development. And every time I'm about to think that, you know, is this even worth it? I have to remember that field visit. And then everything makes sense. If everyone must go there. And I think he's recently been awarded the Amazing Indian Award by CNN or CNBC. So that's amazing. I have the Giftida in Alwar. Again, they taught me the power of what good teams can do in very difficult communities, and fantastic work mobilizing women in very, very restricted environments to study and to earn. That's there. It's. I mean, there are thousands. I can see. There's so many young people now who are doing such outstanding work. I'm not going to touch the youth because they just do. I mean, there's so many names. I can't take two names out of them. So I think I'm very inspired when I walked into the sector and when I went to all these visits. And the first epiphany that I had was, oh my God, there are so many good people.
Yes.
There's so many. And so everything I learned was wrong. There is more good than evil in this world. And today when there is a war going on and there's a world full of crisis, and it's so sad sometimes to read the news. Even then, if you really read, you see there's so much good behavior. There's so much. There is a lot of negative, but that the negative is so loud that we the good kind of is easy to miss.
Yes.
Because the noise is so high. But about 11 years ago, it hit me that there is so much goodness in the world. And I think why I'm around here is because I'm greedy for a part of that. This world is just too much.
You've gone beyond being greedy for a part of that. I think you are creating a lot of that. I think I couldn't help but smile because I genuinely believe that what we need as people, as a population, as a race is to make positivity louder. I think we have just too much sources of negativity, not so much negativity, just the channels that reach us are just negative. And I think that's what is beautiful about the sector. And you are for sure a torchbearer and a champion of that. So thank you so much for that, Naghma. Thank you for coming on DevX so kindly. And if you have any few words that you would like to tell us, feedback, room for improvement, might be happy to hear them. The team would be delighted.
I think no feedback at all. I think this is a beautiful series of communication that you have started to making this more approachable, more doable. Even in the sector, we have this impression that some people get it right and we may not be able to get it right, or there's a them and us that's even here because it is a difficult space. Resources are limited. Some folks are more visible than the others. Some folks are in more powerful position than the others. I think what you're trying to do here is make it all more doable, more reachable, and I really appreciate that. And I hope that the action points from our conversation are heard loud and clear. So I appreciate the way you run it, the thought that you put behind it, the homework that I know you've done, because that's the nature of, I've realized, the way you do your work. So I really appreciate the thoroughness of how you put this out.
Thank you so much. And it was a complete pleasure and a learning experience. I enjoyed myself completely. Thank you so much, Naghma, once again. I really appreciate it. And yes, looking forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Take care.